Yeah, this is the football show and we are brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. It's Mick and Ronan in the studio here and we're delighted to be joined by former Ireland international David Connolly. David, how are you?
Good evening, lads. Very well, you?
Not too bad now, not too bad. It's a good night for Ireland tonight with the women's team qualifying for the playoffs of the World Cup. But yeah, I know you've been keeping an eye on everything in the transfer deadline day. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But you've also been watching Leicester and United. There's about 15 minutes, 10 minutes to go here. It looks like United are going to hang on. Leicester's, I suppose, early pressure in the second half has kind of eased somewhat. Have you been in any way impressed by United?
Look, I think that they're up against a Leicester side who, you can tell are in they're low in confidence. I mean, if you look at the goal, they're going to make a change now. It looks like Iheanacho's coming on, but even for the goal, they could have kind of played out a little bit, Leicester, but they just banged the ball long, caught out of position. Fair play. Rashford did really well, I think, to put it on a plate for Sancho, who finished well. But I think they're up against a Leicester side who are really low. They probably played them, at a good time. And, it looks like they've got the job done. They look pretty comfortable, to be honest, United.
We'll get back to United, but are you surprised with what you're seeing with Leicester this season? It's like you're saying they're very low. It's Thielmann's gone off there, and looks like he will stay with them. But obviously Fofana is off. It doesn't look like there's much coming in, and I see Brendan Rodgers in interviews, and I feel like he's just kind of at the end of his tether a little bit. Like he's like, what can I do at this stage? You know?
Well, do you know what? The programme notes today, I saw the programme notes, and the chairman has been talking about the situation they find them in. Because to be honest, right, everyone is saying how great Brighton are at the minute, but Leicester were Brighton for a long time, right? You look at the players Brighton have sold, your Ben Whites, your Cucureas, your Bissoumas, and they keep going, and they're still doing well. Leicester were like that, right? They had to sell every crown jewel every year, and that was their model. And I don't think they've become a bad team overnight, but they look aging a little bit. They look like they need some fresh faces, but apparently the money's not there. They're so reliant on actually selling players before bringing any others in. So I'd just be mindful of not being too harsh on them, because as I said, they were the model when everyone tried to copy them, and now Brighton are kind of doing brilliantly. But I think Leicester will come good again, but it's not going to happen this window, and it probably won't happen the next window. So they might be in for a difficult few months, because they do look low in confidence.
And I think Brendan Rodgers was making the point that almost accepting the reality that there's players on the pitch tonight that didn't expect to still be there. James Maddison, I think, had 3 bids turned down for a potential move to Newcastle. Jamie Vardy only signed his new contract very recently, and Yuri Tielemans is well documented, seems to be running down his contract and will be out of there this time next season. I just wonder, in terms of squad harmony, to have players like that who were not agitating for a move but looking likely to leave and are still there, now have to take the field and you're relying on them. It must be a strange dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, Fofana looked like he wanted to go, but, he's come out and he wasn't too happy with what Rodgers said. I mean, I was at Stamford Bridge at the weekend. I worked on the game, and a lot of the Leicester staff are the same staff that were there 20 years ago when I was there. And, you hear bits and pieces, and, I don't think they're that far away, but make no mistake, the likes of Kasper Schmeichel would have stayed, because I believe he kind of went for the same money on 3 years, but apparently Leicester couldn't give him that money, So they are in that situation where, they can't lose everyone. They can't lose Maddison and Tielemans, but they'll probably lose Tielemans next year. I think he's a top player. I'm surprised, Liverpool haven't bid for him. I'm surprised a club like that. I mean, I think his passing range is absolutely outstanding. Even a United, I think he could absolutely play for one of those clubs. But they can't lose everyone. But they're probably going to lose, they lost Fofana, they'll keep Maddison. They'll probably lose Tielemans, but they're going to need some extra, that's for sure.
Yeah. On United, David, then, as you said, they are playing Leicester, and we do have to kind of take that for what it is. But after that Liverpool performance, which was weirdly, after only 2 games, a huge huge day in the era of Eric Ten Hag. To follow it up with 2 wins, even if both are scrappy, and again, they haven't won this match yet, but if they do hold on, 2 kind of scrappy wins, 2 mediocre performances. But if you contrast that to what we did see on the first 2 days of the season, which was a rabble, you also have an unchanged side tonight, which I found interesting when we saw it at 8 o'clock. Because, you know, it might not be the team that we end up with at the end of the season, but it's Eric Ten Hag's first team at United. It seems to be what he settled on here. Like, there are signs for United fans. You'd be very positive after these games.
Yeah, they are. Do you know what? I heard the odds, right, after the first week or two, and there was something like 5-1 to finish in the top 10. I mean, people should have been biting that bet off. You know, not that I'm condoning anything, but you know, to finish in the top 10, I mean, that's a 20% return. That's guaranteed. There's no way they were going to stay down there. 1, with the players they were going to add. 2, the squad they've got. And 3, once he's got time to work with them. You know, what he did do against Southampton and started at Liverpool was he didn't risk playing out. You know, he didn't risk the ball in terms of trying to play out from the back with the 2 centre-halves receiving inside the box. And so many times, if you can recall, when they'd be doing that last season and it would just be a disaster. And I think he tried to play the beautiful game, but against Liverpool, he was like, no, we're not going to risk it in these areas. And they did scrap out. It looks like they've scrapped out now a couple of good victories, you know, and there's there's time and a place to go and play, and they're probably getting to that place. They've got Arsenal next, which will be another challenge, you know, another different, definitely a harder challenge, because Southampton, okay, at times they look good, but at other times I've seen them be really, really bad. And Leicester are in this sort of thingy. But make no mistake, you know, Liverpool, they've got 9 really good points by looks of it now. And then it's just the Arsenal one would be the next acid test and how they approach that game. I'd play it basically exactly like the Liverpool one, you know, not be risking the ball in dangerous areas and be trying to play in, you know, in the opposition's half and play from there.
Yeah, like one notable omission from since that hard reset after the Brentford game is Harry Maguire, who hasn't featured against Liverpool, Southampton or against his old club Leicester tonight. And you cast your mind back to the dying embers of the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer reign, where Leicester destroyed Man United last year, and a rather unfit Harry Maguire was targeted almost against his old club. So you wonder, there was never any threat of him leaving in this transfer window or anything like that, but how does he screw his head on for the rest of the season, David, knowing that he's unlikely to feature in any of these first choice 11s?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult, you're right, because, I mean, Martinez, you know, you see him forget his size, but his ball playing ability, and normally he'll be up against, you know, there's a few giant centre forwards, but, you know, when he's got the ball at his feet and he's bringing it out from the back, he gives him that balance playing as a left side centre back, which normally, you know, Harry Maguire would be playing that one. And even Malacia alongside him has, I think, slotted in really, really well. Yeah. So he's made some big calls, you know, in terms of that part of the pitch, because, you know, Maguire and Luke Shaw would be the kind of favoured two for a while. So he's made big calls in terms of disrupting that. But he's got nice balance. You know, there's real nice balance with those two on that left-hand side of the pitch. And I think it's going to be difficult for Harry Maguire, because I can't see him getting in anytime soon unless he changes formation and maybe plays a back 3. But, you know, I think they tried that and it didn't work. I'm not too sure that's going to work for United going forward as well.
Yeah, I saw somebody describe it as like ripping off a plaster, kind of taking, like, once you made that decision, the decision stays made, you know? As United go close. So last thing on this then, Dave, before we talk about some of the transfers, one transfer that has obviously gone through today as expected is Anthony has confirmed that deal. So I'm just thinking there tonight, like, maybe it's a bit early for Elanga in terms of like starting lineup, and you know, he does kind of fit nicely in there, doesn't he, in that position with Sancho and Rashford. Suddenly that front three looks a little bit more vital, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess, look, what are we looking at? We're probably looking at highlights. Everyone looks at the same sort of bits and pieces from Anthony, and you don't want to draw comparisons, but when they signed Ronaldo, you know, everyone thought he was a bit of a, you know, a step-over merchant or a skill merchant, and then, you know, doubted his end product. Well, Anthony looks like that from the clips, right? I mean, we just don't know how he's going to develop. He's only 22 or whatever. He's probably a little bit older than Ronaldo was when he first went to United. But nonetheless, it's got kind of reminds me of that, where they're signing someone who, looks really, really talented, very skillful, tries the audacious, looks really confident. And that's the sort of player they need. Someone who basically will have the balls to go and play at Old Trafford and not mind if he makes a mistake, and has got that confidence. So many players got at United, and Dan James springs to mind, and he says, I went to United as one player, and in the end, I stopped being the player that got me there. Well, I don't think Anthony's going to be like that. He looks a really confident lad, believes in himself, very skillful. And like Ronaldo was, I think, first time around. So, we'll have to wait and see, right? I mean, we just don't know. But I think not just ability, it's the personality and the character to play at United, because, it demands so much of you, not just your ability, but, receiving the ball when maybe things aren't going your way. And Anthony looks like he's got that confidence no matter what.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye on anything that happens over the last few minutes of this, and we'll let you know. As Ronaldo had a chance there a few minutes ago, I didn't even mean to. I kind of laughed, kind of inadvertently, as he kicked it out for a throw. He certainly just doesn't look like Cristiano Ronaldo at the moment. Fred is about to come on, shut up shop even more for United as we go towards the end of that game. David, if you don't mind, you might stay with us for a couple of minutes. We just have a quick break to take, and then we'll talk about some of the transfers from today. Yeah, 3 minutes left at the King Power. It's still Leicester 0, Manchester United 1. Earlier tonight, the Republic of Ireland qualified at least for qualified for a playoff for the World Cup with a 1-0 win over Finland in Tala. David Connolly is still with us here on the Football Show. We were talking about Manchester United and Leicester. We're done about transfer deadline day, though, David, because it's always a busy day. Were you ever involved in transfer deadline day?
Yeah, I had a few moves on deadline day. So, it can be, sort of left to the last minute. I'm just reading here that maybe, Depay was considered maybe going to Chelsea, but whether they've left that too late, they've also got Aubameyang, obviously, from Barca, whether they're trying to get Memphis Depay as well. I think that'd be a great signing for them, but I think they might have left it too late. So, yes, it's a couple of moves late doors, but and it can be exciting. I mean, they've certainly spent a lot of money, right, this window. I mean, I was looking, they reckon in Spain they've spent 55 million euros in this window in Spain, and I think the Premier League have spent 1.something billion euros. That's amazing.
It's really crazy how far it's gone. Just looking at through a couple of them. Arthur Melo to Liverpool looks like that's filling a gap that they needed. Aubameyang, as you mentioned, Zakaria also to Chelsea. Brighton bringing in Billy Gilmore, we were speaking about earlier on, is interesting. Forest, a load of players there, including Willy Bowie, Batshuayi. Villa brought in Dendoncker and look like they're going to bring in Bednarak as well. Akanji to City, Idris Gueye going back to Everton along with James Garner from Manchester United. Fulham with a interesting day as well. Willian probably headlining it from them. Southampton have brought in a couple. It's quite busy for deadline day. As a player though, David, you do have a say in it. It's not like in the American sports, in the trade deadline where you just suddenly you wake up and you're been shipped off to Denver or whatever and you've no say in the matter. But you kind of, I'd imagine, the writing's on the wall, you kind of do. What is it like, kind of like 4 or 5 games into a season, you've done pre-season and suddenly you're shipped off, or it might work the other way as well, you're going off to a better situation?
Yeah, I think it can obviously work a few ways, because I guess by the end of last season as well, a lot of players would know where they might be in the manager's thoughts. If you're at a certain club and they bring in a lot of players, suddenly your position is compromised. We look the game we're watching tonight. You can see that contrasting two teams, right? United have got Ronaldo on the bench, Maguire on the bench. It looks like they're because of new signings. Leicester, they've probably got players playing, and the good players have kind of left the club now, and it's up to the others to pick up the baton. So I mean, some of the moves are interesting. I think the Liverpool one for Melo is one of them, because obviously the injuries they got at the back, and whether the kind of position that that, say, Arsenal have put themselves in, Man City, Tottenham have put themselves in. For Liverpool maybe to keep their powder dry and not go and maybe get some with all their injuries. You just think they might have had someone, like I would have thought someone like a Tielemans, or I don't know, even a Wijnaldum to bring back or somebody like that. I'm surprised. But anyway, Melo looks like, I don't think he's played that much this season, but obviously he played a little bit last season. But I think they certainly needed, someone through the door. And then the kind of polar opposite is Liverpool, barely anyone. And then Forest with sort of 20 signings, it's quite incredible. But they've probably given themselves a real good chance of staying up, by actually going, not doing a Norwich and kind of, keeping the money in the bank and accepting that they'll give it a go, but probably go down. Forest are like, no, we're going to actually go try and stay in this league. And it puts those clubs like Leicester and Villa and Wolves, those clubs that have been up there established for a number of seasons now. Everton puts them under real pressure.
Yeah, it's interesting with the Liverpool one in particular. Klopp has done this a few times during his Liverpool stint, whereby it seems like he's bent over a barrel and has to dip into the transfer window. You'll remember when they were decimated at the back and the fans were crying out for a signing at centre-back, and he ended up getting a couple of loans in, Ozan Kabak as well, like almost thinking I'm going to go for my main target in the summer, and ended up getting Kanate and Van Dijk came back, etc. And it's similar here. You get the impression there's a long-term target in mind, that they're getting Arthur in as a temporary measure with a view to maybe a Jude Bellingham next summer or a Declan Rice. But it's a bit tricky. Like Liverpool, I'm not saying they're not guaranteed top four, but there's a lot of teams lurking around there. If they did have a dip in form, they're taking a little bit of a chance here, not reinforcing them a bit stronger.
Yeah, the only thing is they might look at even a Man City, right? You look at Man City's bench at the minute, and there's probably, there's 3 or 4 world-class players, and then after that, it's a pretty small. They've got a lot of the youngsters on it, and that's probably as well. I think both managers like to have a fairly tight squad. One, you're balancing big egos, big money, big salaries, keeping players happy. You see Liverpool kind of with the mix of a lot of youngsters. Now those youngsters will be, easier to manage. Like Mikel Arteta, he might get rid of a few players, and you just wonder whether he can manage the big ego players, because he seems to prefer the younger players. Jurgen Klopp likes that mix. He does have a lot of the youngsters, but maybe, if you've got a couple of bigger players who might be on the bench, it might be a bit of an issue. So I think there is that balance that he doesn't want to, bring someone in if they're not going to be happy, if they're not, not starting. And also he's got the likes of Jota to come back in, right? He has got other players. But, yeah, you're right. It could be a Bellingham. It could be somebody like that. They're going to, sort of keep the money in their pocket until then. But by the summer, Man City might have, by sort of, I don't know, April, Man City might have run away with the league by then. I don't know.
And you mentioned the Nottingham Forest situation, which feels kind of unprecedented. The raft of players they've come in after those that would have seen them in the Championship, like Cooper, had built a nice tight-knit squad, and you got the impression they might go at what they had, but they've gone the opposite direction and trying to integrate this new group of players in with that existing playing staff. I just wonder, from your perspective, what is that like when you're introducing yourself to new players every day in training or every day in the dressing room? It's like, hi, I'm David, who are you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It must be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously there's another peg, someone has a new peg beside you, or someone who was beside you has been shifted into the sort of reserve dressing room and is no longer there. It gives you that sense, though, that the club might be going places or giving it a really good go to stay in the league. And look, there's a couple of ways, because when Fulham went up a few years ago, the manager then at the time, Scott Parker, sort of gave the players who got up an opportunity. He gave them a chance to go and play, and actually the results, the gap was big and the results weren't great. And in the end, he had to go and get a team full of loanees in January, and you don't want that. And I think for Steve, although Fulham gave it a go, I think for Steve Cooper now, getting your business done in the summer and having this period to try and integrate them and get them all settled in and make the squad stronger, I'd much rather have it that way, and permanent signings. You know, a couple of loans is fine, but I think in the main you want permanent signings, because otherwise it's too much of a transient feel around the club that people don't know if this is going to work out or not. Whereas you go in on a permanent, it's like, no, this club's going for it, you know, and he's on a 2-year deal, he's on a 3-year deal, he's on a 4-year deal, you know, and it's a different mentality that you suddenly have if there's permanent signings.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out there, I think. But I think a lot of the teams, like, again, I feel like it's a busier deadline day than normal after a busier transfer window. So there's going to be lots to see how it works over the next couple of weeks and months. But David, thanks a million for joining us tonight.
Cheers, lads. Thank you.